And Daf 11b, top of the page, with the words Ma'ale Halan. Ma'ale Halan Shein L'Gav Ela Shem L'Gav Av Nasi Shem L'Gabav Ela Shem L'Gav. Just as there in the passage with regard to the king, the reference is to one over him. There is only there in the king. The only one over him is the Lord his God. So too, with regard to a Nasi, the reference is to one over him, over whom there is only the Lord his God. Boy mina Rabbi Merechia Kegon Ani Mahu B'Sarir Avalei Hare Tzaratcha Babavel Itvei Malchis Chalach Beit David Einu Mevim Latzmam Ve'einu Mevim Latzmam Avalei Hatam L'Chayv Yadadi HaChanan Kavin Nehu Ledidu. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi raised the dilemma before Bechia. In a case where I perform an unwitting transgression, what is the halacha? Would I be liable to atone with a goat as a sin offering because I am the Nasi? Or is my atonement with a ewe or with a female goat, like a commoner, because I am not the king? Rechia said to him, your rival, the exilarch in Babylonia, is as great as you. Therefore, you are not akin to a king. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi raised an objection to Rechia from Hebraita. If kings of the kingdom of Israel and the kings of the house of David perform an unwitting transgression, these bring a sin offering for themselves as kings, and those bring a sin offering for themselves as kings. This indicates that even if a king has a counterpart who is as powerful as he is, he brings a male goat as a sin offering. Rabbi Chia said to Yehuda Nasi, there the kings were not subject to each other's authority. Here in Eretz Israel, we are subject to their authority, as the authority of the exilarch is greater than the authority of the Nasi. Rev Safra Masniachi Vaivina Rabbi Merechia Kegonani Mahu B'Soir Ovalei Hasam Shever Hasam Mechokek Tanya Lo Yisur Shev Imuda Ze Rosh Gola Shebebavel Sheroneh Et Yisrael Mamakel Mechokek B'Bin Aglav Elo B'nei Barav Shel Hillel Shulamdim Toira Le'Yisrael Rabim. Rav Sofer taught the exchange in this manner. He said it over this way. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi raised a dilemma for Rechia. Just a side note, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he was the Tana. Rechia was the Mora. How was he? I guess they overlapped. Maybe that was a generation of the overlap. He asked Rechia, in a case where I perform an unwitting transgression, what is the halacha? Would I be liable to atone with a male goat as a sin offering because I am the Nasi? Or is my atonement with a ewe or a female goat, like a commoner because I am not the king? Rabbi Chia said to him, there, the exilarch has authority that is represented by a scepter. Here in Israel we have a lesser authority, which is represented by a staff, and it is taught in Braita, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, Genesis 49:10. This is a reference to the exilarch in Babylonia, who reigns over the Jewish people with a rod, as he is authorized by the Gentile monarchy to impose his will. Nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, Genesis 49:10. These are the descendants of Hillel, who serve in the role of the Nasi and teach Torah to the Jewish people in public, who are not authorized by the government to impose their will. Okay, new Mishnah. Ve'ezahu HaMashiach, HaMashiach b'shem HaMishcha, lo HaMerubah b'Yegadim. אין בין כהן משוח בשם המשחה למרוב המגדים אלא ברבה על כל המצוות. Okay, the Mishnah says, who is the anointed priest? It is the high priest who is anointed with the anointing oil, and not the high priest consecrated by donning multiple garments, meaning one who served after the anointing oil had been sequestered toward the end of the first temple period. The difference between a high priest anointed with the anointing oil and one consecrated by donning multiple garments, unique to the high priest, is only as the latter does not bring the bull that comes for the transgression of any of the mitzvot. Ve'ein bein kohen mishamesh lekohen she'avar ela par yom kippurim masir et ha'efa. and the difference between the high priest currently serving in that capacity and a former high priest who had temporarily filled that position while the high priest was unfit for service is only with regard to the bull brought by the high priest on Yom Kippur and the 10th of an ephah meal offering brought by the high priest daily. Each of these offerings is brought only by the current high priest and not by the former high priest. וזה וזה שווים בעבודת יום הכיפורים ומצווים על הבתולה והסורים על הלבנה ואין המטמאים מקרוביהם ולא פורעים ולא פורמים ומחזירין הרוצח. Both this and the high priest currently serving in that, meaning the former high priest, are equal with regard to performing the rest of the Yom Kippur service, and they are both commanded with regard to marrying a virgin, see Leviticus 21:13, and is prohibited for both to marry a widow, see Leviticus 21:14, and they may not render themselves impure with impurity imparted by a corpse, even in the event that one of their relatives dies. See Leviticus 21:11. And they may not grow their hair long, and they may not rend their garments as expressions of mourning. See Leviticus 21:10. And when they die, they restore the unwitting murderer to his home from the city of refuge. See Numbers 35:25. Gemara, Talmud says, היו שונקים בו את העיקרים, דברי רבי יהודה. רבי יוסי אומר לא נסוך את העיקרים, אין לו סופק, אלא שורן את העיקרים במים, ומציף עליו שמן, וקולט את הריח וכוחו. The sages taught to blend the anointing oil that Moses prepared in the wilderness. They would boil in the oil the roots of the spices and the quantities enumerated in the verse. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi says, but isn't that amount of oil insufficient to smear on the roots of those spices, as the oil would be absorbed into the roots? How then could the roots be boiled in the oil? Rather, they soak the roots in the water. Once the roots are waterlogged, they do not absorb the oil. The fragrance of the spices gradually rises, and they float oil on the water, and the oil absorbs the fragrance. At that point, one removed the oil from the water, and that was the anointing oil. אמר יהודה וכינס אחד נעשה בשמן המשכן והלא תחילתו 12 לוגין וממנו היה נמשך משכן וחיליו אהרון ובניו כל 7 ימי המילואים וכולו קיים נטיל לבוא שנאמר שמן משחת קודש יהיה זה לי לדורותיכם. Rabbi Yehuda said to him, and was it merely one miracle that was performed with regard to the anointing oil, but wasn't it initially only 12 log? And from the tabernacle and its vessels, Aaron and his sons were anointed for the entire 7 days of inauguration, and all of it remains in existence for the future. As they say that this shall be a sacred anointing oil unto me throughout your generations. Exodus 30:31. Since the entire existence of the anointing oil is predicated on miracles, it is no wonder that its preparation also involved a miracle. Okay. Tanya Idach, V'yikach Moshe, Shemen Mishka, V'yimshach, in bracket et, Amishkan, bracket et, Kol Asher Bo, Rabbi Yehuda Mer Shemen Mishka, Shetzomon Sheva Midbar, Kama Nisim Nasu Bo, Mitchila V'yad Sof, Techilato Lo Haya, Ela 12 lugin, Re Kama Yore Bolaat, V'chama Ikarim Bolim, V'chama U Soref, ובו ימשך משכן מחילה ואחרון ובניו כל 7 ימי המילואים ובו ימשכו הכהנים גדולים ומלכים. It is taught in another Braita, and Moses took the anointing oil and anointed the tabernacle and all that was in it and sanctified them. Leviticus 8:10. Rabbi Yehuda says with regard to the anointing oil that Moses prepared the wilderness, how many miracles were performed in regard to continuously from beginning to end? Initially it was only 12 log. Consider how much oil a pot absorbs and how much oil is absorbed by the roots and how much oil the fire burns and gets the tabernacle and its vessels. Aaron and the sons were anointed with it for the entire 7 days of inauguration. And high priests and kings were anointed with it throughout the generations. Kohen Gadol Tanam Mashiach Melech Ben Melech ואם תאמר מפני מה משפט שלמה מפני מחלוקתו של אדוניה ואת יואש מפני עתליה ואת יהואחז מפני יהויקים שהיה גדול ממנו 2 שנים ואותו שמן קיים לעתיד לבוא שנאמר שמן משחת קודש יהיה זה לי לדורותיכם זה בגימטריה 12 לוגין אבות. Apropos to anointing oil, the Bride continues, and even a high priest, son of a high priest, requires anointing. But one does not anoint a king, son of a king. And if you say, for what reason did they anoint King Solomon? See 1 Kings chapter 1. Who was the son of the king of a king? It was due to the challenge of Adonijah, who sought to succeed their father David as king, and they anointed Yoash due to Athaliah. See 2 Kings chapter 11. And they anointed Joachaz due to Joachim, who was 2 years older than he was. See 2 Kings 23:30. In all these cases, it was necessary to underscore that these men were crowned king, and that oil remains in existence for the future, as it is stated this, Zeh shall be a sacred anointing oil unto you throughout your generations. Exodus 30:31, the numerical value of Zeh is 12 log, indicating that this amount of oil remains intact despite its use. Amar Mar. Afilo Kohen Gadol Ben Kohen Gadol Mashiach Ben Tichti Kohen Mashiach Tachta Bibanam Dimakra Tichti Kohen Bibanam Mashiach Kamash Malan Bibanam Kohen Gadol Ya Mashiach. The Gemara analyzes the Braita. The master said, an even high priest, son of a high priest requires anointing. The Gemara asks, from where do we derive halacha? It's derived from the verse as written, and the anointed priest that shall be in his stead are from among his sons, Leviticus 6:15. Let the verse also say, only the priest that shall be in his stead from among his sons. What is the reason that it says the anointed priest? The Torah teaches us that even from among the sons of a high priest, if he is anointed with oil, he is a high priest. If he is not, he's not a high priest. Okay. He is not, he's not a high priest. Amar. Yehoshua melech ben melech ben alad. Amar Ravach bar Yaakov Silaman yarich yamim al memachto Yerusha yilachem. ומן הנחיי כמה פלגת מלכי חבליו כל לבנים מלכה לבאים מלכות מלכות הפלגי אמר רב המקרא הוא בנת בקר ישראל בזמן ששלום לישראל כנבא הוא בנת אפילו לא משיכה. The master said, but one does not anoint a king, son of a king. The Gemara asks, where do we derive halacha? Yaakov said that it's derived from a verse as is written, so he will prolong his days in his kingdom, and he and his sons in the midst of Israel, Deuteronomy 17:20. His children are mentioned in the verse in order to teach them the kingdom is an inheritance for you. The Gemara asks, and from where do we derive that when there is a dispute with regard to succession, the king requires anointing, and it is not that whenever the king wishes, he can bequeath the kingdom to his son without anointing him. Or Papa said that the verse states, he and his sons in the midst of Israel, when there is peace in Israel, we read concerning him, he and his sons, even without anointing. But when there is dispute, anointing is required. Tana. Af Yehu ben Nimshi lo Nimshach. Yehu ben Nimshi lo Nimshach. Even Nimach lo Shiyom. Tzipuk le Mishum Rishono. Machsor Nechsa Vakazani. Mach lebeis Davim Meshuchin. Mach Yisrael Meshuchin. Nawan. Amrava. Amrakara kum Meshachehu. כי זה לגמרי. זה תום משיחה ואין אחר תום משיחה. It's taught even Jehu, the son of Nimshi, king of Israel, was anointed only due to the challenge of Joram. See 2 Kings 9, 1-14. The sages challenged and let him derive that Jehu was anointed due to the fact that he was the first of his dynasty, and was not the son of a king. The Gemara answers the Braita is incomplete, and this is what it is teaching. The kings of the house of David were anointed, kings of the house of Israel, kings of Israel were not anointed. The Gemara asks, from where do we derive this? Rava said that the verse states, arise, anoint him, for this is he. 1 Samuel 16:12. From which is derived, this, King David, requires anointing, but another king does not require anointing. Amar af Yehu ben Imshi lo nimsha, ela b'pnei mach lukato shel Yoam. ומשום מולדו ליום בנחף נימול בשמן כדאמר פאפה באפר סמה דחיה הכי נמי באפר סמה דחיה. The Gemara analyzes the writer. The master said, even Jehu, the son of Nimshi, king of Israel, was anointed only due to the challenge of Joram. The Gemara asks, due to the challenge of Joram, son of Achav, child misused consecrated anointing oil and anointed king of Israel who does not require anointing. The Gemara answers that it is like that which Rav Papa said in another context. They anointed him with pure balsam oil, not with anointing oil. So too, with regards to Jehu, they anointed him with pure balsam oil, but not with anointing oil. שהגדול ממנו שתי שנים ומי קשיש מיני והכתיב ובני יאשיהו וכל יוחנן השני יהויקים השלישי צדקיהו הרביעי שלום ואמר רבי יוחנן הוא שלום הוא צדקיהו הוא יוחנן הוא יואחז לעולם יהויקים קשיש Umay Bechol Malchus. The Bible teaches that they anointed Joachaz to Joachim, who was 2 years older than he was. The Gemara asks, and was Joachim older than Joachaz? But isn't it written in the sons of Josiah, the firstborn Johanan, the second Joachim, the third Zedekiah, the fourth Shalom? 1 Chronicles 3:15. And the Rabbi Yochanan says, he is Shalom, he is Zedekiah. These are two names for one person. Likewise, he is Johanan, he is Joachaz. He is mentioned in the Book of Kings. Since Joachaz was young, why was it necessary to anoint him? The Gemara answers that actually Joachim was older than Joachaz. And what is the meaning of the term firstborn? Written with regard to Joachaz, it means that his status was like that of the firstborn in terms of ascent to the kingship. The Gemara asks, can do younger sons rule before older sons? But isn't it written in the kingdom he gave to Joram because he was the firstborn? 2 Chronicles 21:3. The Gemara answers, Jehoram was a surrogate for his ancestors, as he was suited to serve as a king. So, since he was firstborn, he ascended to the throne. Joachim was not a surrogate for his ancestors. He was not suited to serve as a king, therefore his brother ascended to the throne before him. Amar Mar, Hu Shalom Utziyahu, Hu Yochanan Hu Yachaz, Echad Kachashiv, Nechtiv HaShishiv HaRavi, Mai Shlishi, Shlishi Levanim, Mai Ravi Lemalchut. Demikara Malach Yoachaz, Ulasov Yoakim, Ulasov Yechonia, Ulasov Tzidkiyahu. The master said, he is Shalom, he is Zedekiah, he is Yochanan, he is Yoachaz. The Gemara asks, but doesn't the verse enumerate them individually, as is written in the third Zedekiah, the fourth Shalom, indicating that they are two people? The Gemara answers, what is the meaning of the third? It means the third among the sons. And what is the meaning of the fourth? It means the fourth to ascend to the kingship. How so? Initially, Joachaz reigned, and then ultimately after him, Joachim, and ultimately after him, Jeconiah, son of Joachim, and ultimately after him, Zedekiah, who was fourth to the kingship. Tanahanan. Hu Shalom, Hu Tzidkiyahu, ולמדקה שמו שלום, שלום משולם המעשון. איכת אמרים שלום, ששלמה מלכות בית אביו מימיו. ומה שמו? מתניה שמו, שנאמר וימלך מלך בבל את מתניה דודו, תחתיו יסב את שמו צדקיהו. אמר יצדיק עליך את הדין אם תמרוד בי, שנאמר וביאו בבבל כתיב, גם במלך נבוכדנצר אשר השביעו באלוהים. The sages taught he is Shalom Zedekiah. Why was he called Shalom? It is due to the fact that he was perfect in his actions. Some say he was called Shalom because the kingdom of the house of David was concluded during his days. And what was his actual name? Mataniah was his name. As is stated, and the king of Babylon crowned Mataniah, his uncle, in his stead, and changed his name to Zedekiah. 2 Kings 24:17. Why did Nebuchadnezzar call him Zedekiah? He said to him, God will justify the judgment against you if you rebel against me. And it is written, and he also rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar, who had imposed upon him an oath by God. 2 Chronicles 36:13.